Hey, we're cooking with gas here on the Jewcast.
Okay, careful using a phrase like that.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery, of a sham, of a mockery, of a travesty, of two mockeries, of a sham.
Tradition!
Oh, shut up, Carl! Shut your goddamn Jew mouth! You people are why there's war in the Middle East!
Gekakken auf een jam.
Nebbig.
Verpoepoepoe.
Vermischt.
Verkakt.
Vertutst.
Verstonken.
Fartig.
Exactly.
You what Grammy Hall would call a real Jew.
Shalom! Here we are again, everybody, for another Jew-packed episode of American Jew.
We are here, and we are Jewish, and we are American, and we are podcasting!
And we are excited!
Woohoo!
I've got so much nachas today.
Oh, really? Are you filled with pride?
Is that? Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying.
What are you proud of, Jordon?
I'm of this, what we're doing right now.
Of us?
Of doing this.
Okay.
We,
Self-nachas.
Yes.
The most important nachas. Someone's been reading some Jewish self-help gurus.
Well, listen, I'm going to tell you this right now. As we always start these episodes, we try to talk about some good Jewish news, and it was hard to find some. So today, I feel like the good Jewish news is that it's us.
It's us. It's good. Things are going well for you.
I think it's good that we're sitting down and having, kibitzing and schmoozing and talking about some of this stuff. That part is good.
You know, I guess there is something, this concept that I remember hearing about growing up, how, like, God always wants there to be, like, people discussing the Torah and discussing Judaism. So we are kind of facilitating that and adding into that in our own little secular way.
I think it's important we call ourselves out for the mitzvah we're doing by doing this.
I don't know if it's a mitzvah if you say you're doing it for the mitzvah, though. Isn't there something like about that?
It's a very meta mitzvah, is what it is.
Meta mitzvah, I like that.
But I think that ultimately we are going to be discussing and highlighting some anti-Semitism in the world that's happening, and so I feel like we got to start with some positivity.
Definitely. I don't think this week we really want to highlight any particular act of anti-Semitism, but we want to add to the discussion about anti-Semitism that's going on, specifically in America today. You know, this week they had the AIPAC had a big convention, and it's been a lot in the news. You know, we mentioned this briefly last week before we got into the perm discussions, that the Republican Party is going hard, that the Democrats are anti-Israel and thus anti-Jewish. I mean, that's a remark that Trump said himself. You know, I know he's a friend to Israel, and I know his daughter's Jewish, and he talks a big talk about Judaism, but we also have to get straight that he has made some, like, horrible comments that really kind of encourage...
Consistently. He's consistently made these comments.
That they encourage, like, anti-Semitic impulses of people from the right, from people from his base. He did have, a final ad in his Trump campaign, which showed an image of Jewish people, like, you know, billionaire George Soros, or Fred Chair, or Janet Yellen. And while he was doing this, he was talking about how it was a global power structure that was corrupting the government. These are all Jewish people. That's feeding into the anti-Semitic trope that the Jews are controlling the world or whatever.
Right.
So that is sending a bad message. Of course, after the neo-Nazi rally in Charlottesville, we all remember when Trump suggested that some of the white supremacists that were rallying there were, I think his quote was, very fine people.
Well, I think the biggest thing that he's been saying lately is he's trying to shift the narrative and say that it's Democrats who are spewing anti-Semitic remarks, and that many Democrats are going to leave the Democratic Party and become Republicans because of anti-Semitism coming from the left.
Well, that's what him and the whole party are saying. And
right.
I just want to say one more thing about what Trump said, that there was an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that he said that, you know, George Soros might be secretly funding immigration into the U.S. And the man who ended up killing 11 people in the Pittsburgh synagogue, he said he was inspired by that same George Soros conspiracy. So, you know, for Trump to get on there and talk smack about, you know, Ilhan Omar or anybody from the Democratic Party, like, what he's riling up anti-Semitics everywhere. So, like you mentioned, yes, they're trying all to say that the Democrats, they're anti-Israel, they don't like Jewish people. You know, it was a big thing that none of the people that are going to be running for president for the Democratic Party in 2020, they weren't apparently, like, really at the convention. Mike Pence, the vice president, in his speech, he said that they're all boycotting.
Right.
Again, this is like a blatant lie. While Bernie Sanders says that he doesn't agree with the policies of the AIPAC, and Elizabeth Warren has offered similar sentiments, many of the other people running, including Cory Booker, actually met with members of the AIPAC, and they had other reasons why they couldn't be there. So to say that they're boycotting it is just putting out false information. Nancy Pelosi, she was there. She's a Democrat, Speaker of the House, and she actually made a speech. And in her speech, she said that she would never use this to put a wedge between people. And that's exactly what the Republican Party, that's exactly what the Republican Party is trying to do now. They're trying to put a wedge because they're trying to gain favor.
The comments that Ilhan Omar made about how anybody that has that's American that has allegiance to Israel has dual loyalty, that's the comment that really got her in trouble, right?
That one, and when she said it's all about the Benjamins.
Right.
By the way,
she's quoting P. Diddy.
Yeah, and then we had a congressman this week, Mo Brooks from Alabama, who read from Mein Kampf.
Right.
He read from Mein Kampf, saying that the Democrats were like the Jews, actually. He's quoting Hitler, and, that's crazy. It's crazy. Ilhan Omar, she quotes P. Diddy, and it's like there's hell to pay. This guy fucking quotes Hitler, and what's the quote? Those living in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
Seriously, it's the worst reboot of Springtime for Hitler I've ever encountered.
Seriously, and I think all these efforts, instead of bashing the Democratic Party, they should be bashing these moments of anti-Semitism, these acts of anti-Semitism all over the world. But they're not talking about that. They're just saying, oh, the Democrats hate Jews, the Democrats are anti-Semitic, which is a lie, which is false. I mean, Bernie Sanders is Jewish himself. Believe me, he doesn't hate himself. He likes himself very much.
There are a lot of self-hating Jews, but
I mean, I'm one of them. But still, I wouldn't consider myself an anti-Semite.
You're more specific.
Yeah, it's more just.
It's not a blanket statement. I don't hate all Jews. I just hate myself and a handful of people in my family.
It's crazy. A lot of Jewish people, Israeli people, even want to say, a lot of these people want to say that if you're anti-Israel, you're an anti-Semite. And that is just not true. And we really need to distinguish the difference, because you could be against some of the things that Israel's doing, their policies, treatment of the Palestinian people, whatever it is, and it doesn't mean you hate all Jewish people. And by doing that, we're doing a disservice to ourselves as Jews, because we're making the other people, the anti-Semites, think that that's the case, and it is not, and it's wrong, and it's just absurd. It really is, and it's feeding into it all and making it a lot worse.
Well, I read this article a few years ago that was talking about how news stories are covered and how the narratives are shaped by there being two sides, and regardless of how large the opinions are on one side, they're represented as 50-50.
Right.
So, for example, in the climate change debate, they have all the scientists in the world that say that climate change is real, and then they have one person who disagrees with it on TV to debate one scientist.
Right.
You don't, and it's I think it's a similar thing in this situation where no matter what people on the left are saying, they're arguing with one-on-one.
Right, just they said that maybe there's three Democratic congressmen, Ilhan Omar being one of them, that have done some stuff that could be seen as anti-Israel and anti-Semitic, but there's so many of them. That's right. Not even barely a fraction of how many there are. People do that, but also this is America and we have free speech, and you can't criticize our policies from Israel? That's crazy. You have to be able to say if you disagree and be able to talk, and people should be open to this discourse, and it's wrong. And they had Netanyahu. He was here. He had to fly back because unfortunately, I guess the people bombed in Israel, and he went back there. One of the things he did say was directed to Ilhan Omar that he's a Benjamin, and it's not all about the Benjamins, but he's actually being indicted in Israel right now for taking money. So, it seems like it's totally wrong. We need to get away from this narrative. Ilhan Omar apologized. I don't see Trump apologizing for when he tweeted a bag of money with a Star of David on it,
Trump hasn't. I don't think I've ever seen Trump apologize for anything ever. The one time he had to read an apology on the air, he looked so uncomfortable, and about 5 minutes later he went off script and recanted it, essentially. So Trump doesn't apologize for anything.
Yeah. I mean,
he doubles down on when you accuse him of something horrible. He's like, "Oh no, what I said was right, and it's not even horrible."
It's just sad that like people are buying into this right now, and we can't do that. It's not true. Not all Democrats are against it. Not all the people running for president of the Democratic Party in 2020 are against it. And people have reasons, and you should be open. Just because people don't agree with how Israel is treating the Palestinian people and don't agree with the stuff that the AIPAC does, doesn't mean that they're totally against the state of Israel, and doesn't mean that they're against every single Jewish person in the world. You know, that's the same thing as being like, because of 9/11, all the Muslims are bad, which has gotten us in a horrible place and put hatred. And, you know, the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi and the Speaker of the House, they all put together that resolution against anti-Semitism. They made it larger to include people of Muslim descent, basically to include all hatred everywhere. And some of the Republicans voted against it.
Yeah.
And now Republicans want to make their own resolution that's just about the Jewish people and really goes into detail about all the hardships that the Jewish people have faced. And you know what? Yes, anti-Semitism towards Jewish people is wrong, but all hatred towards everybody is wrong, and the Jewish people aren't special opposed to anybody else. We're not better than the Muslim people. We're not better than Christian people. And this is the kind of stuff that makes people hate us when they think, oh, the Jews have to get their own resolution where it's only about them. This fuels the fire for anti-Semitism. That's what the Republicans are doing.
I will say, though, the Jews, we suffer better than anybody, I think. We really do suffering properly.
Okay, we know to suffer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where apparently the Jewish sense of humor has come from.
Yeah, I mean, that's, if you look at, I mean, let's talk about this week's Torah portion. There's some suffering happening in there.
A little bit of suffering. I mean, it starts off about giving more sacrifices.
Right.
And
Moses' sons.
Moses has 4 sons. Apparently 2 of them, they give bad sacrifices. I don't know, they don't wash their hands the right way. They were drunk. They brought in a fire from someplace else. They did something that God didn't like.
Yeah.
They pissed him off, and God kills them on the spot, like bickety bam. Which is a little twisted because they were still giving the thing. But then, you know, I read that, you know, whatever some other people say, it was because they were eager for Moses and Aaron to die so they could take their place. And some say they whispered it. Some say they thought of it. Who knows? But God kills 2 of the sons. And then he tells Aaron and the other sons of Moses they can't mourn for it. They have to partake in the feast. They can't do anything. And gets into the laws of kashrus, right?
Right, all the dietary restrictions.
All the dietary restrictions.
You can't eat any lizards, right?
Any reptiles. You can't eat any reptiles. So listen, people...
But it's funny that he says you can't eat any reptiles, but he actually lists all the fucking reptiles that they had, I guess, at the time.
I think there are more reptiles. I don't think this is like... I don't think he visited the Galapagos Island when he made this list. But... for people that don't know about the laws of kashrus, you know, I once dated a girl, and she thought that the phrase, it's all kosher, just meant like everything's okay. She had no idea.
Oh,
yeah. She had no idea that these are dietary laws that God passed down to the Jewish people, the things they can eat and they can't eat. So what they are basically is, for mammals, for land-dwelling creatures that aren't reptiles, you have to have split hooves and chew your cud. So if the animals do those 2 things, then you can eat them. If they don't, then you can't. That, you know, pig is one of them. It doesn't. You can't. It doesn't chew its cud. I guess. You can't eat it. And then for when it comes to fish, it had to have scales and fins. The fish, so like you can't eat any seafood.
Right.
Which seafood is amazing. Come on, lobster, shrimp, oysters, crab. I mean, these are. I mean, octopus. I'm sorry, but I mean, what kind of religion will keep those from the people? Because those are some of the best foods ever. Then it talks about insects. You can't eat any insects except for 4 types of locusts.
I don't want to eat locusts.
Yeah,
I don't want to eat
any of those.
I don't even eat the chocolate-covered bugs.
Right? Well, apparently, I think grasshopper is one of them. And then when it comes to birds, there's no laws. There's just a bunch of birds you can eat. He's just like, you can't have these.
Right.
He just lists them. Eagle, no. Buzzard, no. Vulture, no. Owl, no.
Well, it's weird. We don't really eat those birds. Nobody eats those birds.
Yeah, nobody eats them.
Nobody. Who's ever eaten an owl?
I've never heard of anybody eating an owl.
I don't know. I've never heard of. I've never seen an owl recipe.
If you ask an owl, it'll say, "Whoo, whoo,
yeah.
whoo." Okay, that was.
How many licks does it take to get to the center of the owl?
Yeah.
Well, I think, ultimately, this is why Jews are so hard to please at a restaurant. There's nothing they can fucking eat.
This is where it started from.
Right.
This is where God started it when he told us what we could eat and what we can't eat. And, and then he goes into, I guess, how to purify, like, your utensils if you use them.
Right. So this is also the same thing about how you can't eat meat that's been on a plate that had dairy on it.
Is that what he talks about? Then you have to take that plate to the mikvah? That's a law, but I don't think he gets into in this week's parsha that
you have to purify it by burying it in the dirt or something. Do people do that?
I mean, that is something apparently. But this week, I think he just talks about how you have to put it in the mikvah, and the mikvah is like a wellspring, a pool that is a purifying place. It's basically like a spa. It's a Jew spa. Spa for Jews. I think like if you buy new silverware, the first thing you have to do is like go to the mikvah if you want to be kosher.
Well, this is funny because we just built the tabernacle and the temple and all the different things that we had to build for God, and now he's saying we have to have 2 kitchens.
Yeah, God.
Got to have a kosher kitchen.
He just wants a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I understand like not wanting to eat pig back in the day. There were health concerns with it, I
know, but bacon is so goddamn good.
It is delicious. And it almost makes me wonder if maybe, like, at that time, again, we've talked about who wrote the Bible, the Kohanim, they are mentioned again here, when they were giving the sacrifices. Maybe they were they were shepherds of cows, and they were shepherds of animals that chewed their cud and had split hooves.
Right.
So they're like, oh, screw the pig guy. We don't want him to get any money.
Right.
Like the guy who was the pig farmer, like had sex with their daughter or something. So it's they're really upset about it.
It's like the same way that the tobacco industry and the cotton industry destroyed marijuana as a thing because they were threatened by the commerce.
What a fantastic analogy,
yeah.
Jordan.
I certainly don't keep kosher myself.
I don't keep kosher.
I don't. And in fact, my grandmother had a great saying in terms of whether or not it was okay to eat on Yom Kippur if you broke the fast too early, whatever. My grandmother used to say, sins come out of the mouth, not into them.
Oh, that's a good one.
So eat what you want.
Eat what you want.
Yeah, just don't badmouth the chef.
That also works for oral sex.
Yes.
But unfortunately, that's what the priest told the altar boy.
Right, it's in a different book, that one. I feel like this episode was pretty kosher.
This was definitely a kosher episode. It's definitely not kosher what Trump and the Republican Party are doing. So we really urge everybody not to listen to what they say, to be informed, to do some research. Thanks for listening. We hope everybody has a great Shabbos. Check us out on all the social media. We're at American Jew Podcast on everything except for Twitter, which is at American Jew Pod. Check me out on Instagram at Jonathan Randall.
We are excited to have shared the 8th day of the Bible, of the Torah, with you on our 8th episode.
Yeah, that's right. That's how this week's Torah portion starts, right? On the 8th day.
On the 8th day, there is the 8th episode.
I would so.
Goodbye.